With each new day comes a new twist in the West versus Russia crisis. In the latest, the Kremlin has now said that NATO is ramping up Ukraine tensions with its latest deployment. Russia's angry reaction comes after earlier in the day, NATO said that its allies have put forces on standby and sent ships and fighter jets to bolster Europe's eastern defences as tensions soar over Russia's military buildup around Ukraine. Issuing a statement, the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said that NATO will continue to take all necessary measures to protect and defend all allies, including by reinforcing the eastern part of the alliance. We will always respond to any deterioration of our security environment, said Stoltenberg. The US-led military organization said that it is now beefing up its deterrence presence in the Baltic Sea area. Denmark, meanwhile, is sending a frigate and deploying F-16 warplanes to Lithuania. Spain will also send warships and could send fighter jets to Bulgaria, while France has said that it is ready to send troops to Bulgaria as well. And over the weekend, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, the NATO countries closest to Russia, confirmed that they too are planning to send US-made anti-tank, anti-aircraft missiles to Ukraine. On rising tensions, the Latvian foreign minister tweeted earlier, and I quote, "We are reaching the point where continuous Russian and Belarusian military build-up in Europe needs to be addressed by appropriate NATO countermeasures. It is time to increase Allied forces' presence in the alliance's eastern flank as measures of defence and deterrence." Meanwhile, Ireland has said that the new format of Russian war games off its coast is not welcome.
This isn't a time to increase military activity and tension in the context of what's happening with and in Ukraine at the moment. And so I think it's important that I would brief my colleagues on those intentions. Russia, under international law of the sea, can of course undertake military exercises in international water. But the fact that they're choosing to do it on the western borders, if you like, of the EU, off the Irish coast, is something that, in our view, is simply not welcome and not wanted right now, particularly in the coming weeks.
Kavni made these comments at a European Union meet on the Ukraine crisis. Present at these talks, EU's foreign policy chief Josep Borrell also said that a united European bloc stands behind Ukraine and that member countries, along with the United States, are now discussing possible sanctions if Russia invades Ukraine. While the Danish foreign minister warned of never-seen-before sanctions if and when Russia invades Ukraine.
Today we will have Blinken at our meeting, Secretary Blinken, to coordinate further steps. There's no doubt we are ready to react forcefully with comprehensive sanctions, never seen before, seen a number of sanctions, if Russia will continue and invade Ukraine again. And it's also very important to say that at the same time we are ready to discuss with our diplomatic track in a coordinated fashion with Russia.
The European Union has also announced a €1.2 billion financial aid package for Ukraine to mitigate the effects of the ongoing conflict with Russia.
So today, I am announcing a new financial assistance package to the country, made both of emergency loans and grants. First of all, the Commission proposes a new emergency macrofinancial assistance package of €1.2 billion. This package will help Ukraine now to address its financing needs due to the conflict.
For more clarity about this conflict, joining us now are our correspondents, Rosie Burchard from Brussels and Susan Teherani from New York. Welcome to WION, both of you. I'd like to take my first question to you, Rosie, from Brussels. The Kremlin has said that NATO is ramping up Ukraine tensions with its latest deployment. What is the situation on ground as of now? Will this lead to a further flare-up in the conflict despite last week's talks?
Well, I think it's important to note here that NATO has announced that that allies are putting troops on standby. That means for now there is certainly no additional boots on the ground. It did also suggest that some allies were planning or or willing to send military assets. And that's something which does kind of divide some NATO allies there on how best to proceed with this. But really what we can say is this is all about deterrence. It's certainly not any sort of direct defence of Ukraine, not least because Ukraine is not a NATO ally, meaning the other allies bear no responsibility toward defending it, unlike the way they do toward each other. So really what NATO is trying to do here, it seems, is just to send a strong message to say that should there be any threat to the territorial integrity of one of its allies, other allies in the West are ready to bolster their presence there. And I think what's most interesting in this statement from NATO is that it says the United States has made it clear that it's considering to reinforce its troop presence in the Eastern European NATO allies, which will be music to their ears. The Estonian Prime Minister recently said that the best possible deterrence to Russia is an American flag.
Right. Now, Rosie, you say this is all about deterrence. Experts have either told WION about this crisis, and it has clearly been said that Russia is not planning any kind of invasion on Ukraine. Russia has also said that it is not going to invade Ukraine anytime soon, but the West still fears otherwise. So are all these simply intimidation tactics?
Well, it's true that the Kremlin absolutely denies any intention whatsoever of invading Ukraine, but as US Secretary Blinken put it on Friday, what they're interested in is not words but rather actions and history. So the actions they're referring to is that buildup of troops around the borders, and history, of course, they're referring to the annexation of Crimea several years ago. And it was that, in fact, that event which triggered already NATO deployment, presence of troops within Eastern European countries. So should there be increased deployment, as was suggested by this announcement today, this would not actually be a never-before-seen event.
Right, Rosie, thank you so much for all those inputs, and thanks for joining us from Brussels on this broadcast. Susan Tehrani, stay with us on this broadcast. We'll come back to you for some more inputs. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.